Hey guys, I'm Stefan Kesting. Been doing martial arts for 38 years. I had to work that out on my fingers and toes beforehand because I've been hitting the head quite a bit. This is my mustache. And this mustache is the remnant of a big beard that I grew during the 1,000-mile solo canoe trip that I just finished. I finished that in early August. It was really challenging, it was really rewarding, and parts of it were even fun. If you want to go to grapplearts.com/solo, you can see some of the pictures and some of the descriptions of the trip. It's 1,000 miles, much of it across giant lakes into headwinds or going upriver up an ancient route that the natives used to travel from the tundra down to the boreal forest and from the boreal forest up into the tundra. Both the Inuit would come down to trade, and the Chippewan, or now the Dene, would go up to hunt caribou. It was an amazing trip. If you go to grapplearts.com/solo, you can see the trip and the development of the mustache. Let's totally change gears. Let's talk about the number of coaches that you need to get good at modern martial arts. And by modern martial arts, I basically mean either MMA or people who are training like MMA fighters, people who want to be well-rounded. Now, if you're just a recreational guy and you just want to kickbox a little bit, wrestle a little bit, do some jiu-jitsu, you can learn that from one person. There are lots of new breed instructors who have some basic competence in those three areas: striking, wrestling, and grappling, who can show you the ropes. What I'm talking about is if you're really serious. Say you want to become an instructor someday, or say you want to fight in MMA, or say you want to really take your martial arts to the next level. The days of going to one instructor, traveling a long and dangerous journey to go travel with Pai Mei at the Shaolin Temple, who would take you under his wing and you would train one-on-one and he'd get you to stand in a horse stance for 4 hours, and then after years of training, you'd go off and you'd avenge your father's death and battle his killer in a kung fu duel. First of all, that never happened. Second of all, if it ever did happen, that's in the past. The modern martial artist, typically, the modern MMA fighter, typically has a striking coach, a wrestling coach, and a jiu-jitsu coach. Usually, there's also a conditioning guy in there, and then there's a bunch of other people, like a physiotherapist, or a chiropractor, or a nutritionist. We're just going to talk about those four. I had to look at my hand. Those four guys: striking coach, wrestling coach, jiu-jitsu coach, and conditioning guy. Because all four are really essential in the modern MMA environment. The days of being able to win the UFC on the basis of being a really good grappler, think of Royce Gracie. Amazing grappler. Not such a great striker. Wrestling, barely adequate. He won an amazing series of fights against really tough opponents who were really trying to take his head off. And he established the entire sport on the strength of jiu-jitsu alone. And that's amazing. But the sport now has evolved so that there are really amazing wrestlers who can stop jiu-jitsu guys from taking them to the ground. So you might end up with a guy like Ryan Hall, who's a pretty good long-range striker. But then if the distance closes, he goes into grappling mode. He almost doesn't need, I'm sure he's got good wrestling, but he almost doesn't need good wrestling. He just needs to be really good at those two ranges. Do you want to stand out and kickbox with him and get kicked in the head by those long, lanky legs? Or do you want him diving in on an Imanari roll, right? And I'm sure he's also got wrestling as well that he could use if he had to. So the modern martial artist needs those four coaches. You need expertise in those four areas, and usually it's not going to be the same person. It's very rare to have somebody who's an expert striker and an expert wrestler and an expert ground fighter or grappler and is an expert in strength and conditioning and nutrition and all that. It just doesn't happen. If you're just starting out MMA, that might be the best you can do, is one guy to do it all. But if you take a look at all the pro fighters, all the guys who've been doing this a long time, almost everybody in the UFC, almost everybody at every high level production, they've got those people. In addition to those guys, there's usually one of them is the head strategist who works with a fighter to develop a game plan. You know what, Bob, this guy, he's really good at stuffing takedowns. He's really good at hopping on his leg and avoiding the takedown, but his endurance isn't that great. That's why for the first 2 rounds, we're just going to wear him down with a clinch, and we're going to wear him down with striking and infighting, and then in the 3rd and 4th rounds, we're going to take him down and beat the crap out of him. Developing a strategy like that and developing the training strategy. Okay, on the Monday, you're going to do this and this. On the Tuesday, you're going to do that and that. And on the Wednesday, you know what? The plan was to do this, but you're looking really run down. Today you're going to do yoga and you're going to do an ice bath, and that's it. Usually that is one of those 4 people. In my personal experience, I've seen lots of examples where the striker is, we'll call him the head coach. What I meant is strategy development guy. Often I've seen the striker be the head coach or the jiu-jitsu guy be the head coach. I have seen the strength and conditioning guy be the head coach for a large group of guys. I've not seen the wrestler, the wrestling coach, be the head statistician, if that's a word, the head strategist, that often. If you can think of a good example of a major team that's headed by a wrestler, other than the Hammer House back in the day, which shows how long I've been watching UFC, go Mark Coleman. Other than the Hammer House, I can't think of a modern equivalent. If you can think of one, please let me know. Post it in the comments below and I'd be happy to revise my opinion. But the modern martial artist, the high-level modern martial artist, usually needs 4 people. And besides, nobody does this in a vacuum anyhow. The big, more so than the Pai Mei and the Shaolin Temple taking you aside, this fundamental incorrect message of those Kung Fu movies is that by training alone, by punching the iron gong 10,000 times, or by hopping around the forest doing monkey style on your own, that you can get better at fighting. You can't. More important than all your coaches and instructors are your training partners. We might be fighting out there on the mat, we might be stepping into the octagon. Ultimately, you're on your own and you are responsible for your training, but the reality is you're doing it in an ecosystem of other people. Your coaches are super important. We don't do it alone. Your training partners are super important because we don't do it alone. And your support people. The people who, if you've got kids, take care of your kids while you train. The people who massage your broken body back into place. The chiropractors who line up your spine. The people who help you out by letting you sleep on their couch. The supplement companies that hook you up with protein powder when you're a broke fighter. You step in the octagon alone, but you don't get ready for the octagon alone. You're only as good as your team. So that's a little insight into who you're going to need on your side to become a high-level modern martial artist.